And we're back to the DMZ America podcast number 96. I'm Scott Stantis, editorial cartoonist, coming to you from the right.
And I'm Ted Rall, editorial cartoonist, coming to you from the ever victorious left.
Oh, progressives on the march from Wisconsin to Chicago. Progressives had a great night on April, what the hell was it, 4th? I can't remember now. Yes, April 4th, when they won the Supreme Court position in Wisconsin, a very important win for them, and also a shocking victory in the city of Chicago, the city of broad shoulders. The Windy City elects Brandon Johnson, a very progressive candidate, as the next mayor of Chicago. And Ted, I got to tell you, as the cartoonist for the Chicago Tribune, this one, man, I'm glad I wasn't on a lot of shows beforehand, because I was predicting that Paul Vallis, who was a more moderate, some would say even conservative candidate, was running on Law and Order, would win handily.
I think that's, yeah. I mean, I didn't pay much attention to the race before. Basically, I took the mainstream view at face value, considering the context, right? Which was that incumbent Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who I guess pretty much is a conservative, and a progressive. A progressive.
Yeah, progressive, yeah.
And she was turned out on her ear. She didn't even make it to the top 2 runoff. She didn't even get to run. She lost before she lost. And
she did.
And so, and the conventional wisdom there was that Chicago is suffering from terrible crime, and the disgruntled, angry people of Chicago were had enough of Lori Lightfoot's woke policies on crime and permissiveness, and so that's why she was out on her ear. And then Chicagoans turned around and elected someone with the same politics.
Well, considerably more. Brandon Johnson is a lot more charming. He's a young guy. He's one of these guys that everyone.
Former teacher.
Yeah, and lobbyist for the CTU, the Chicago Teachers Union. This is bad from my perspective. The CTU has really, I mean, it strikes every 18 months, and that's not an exaggeration. They strike all the time.
Hey, the kids love it.
And the performance by the kid, well, sure, why not? The kids' performance and the academic performance of the schools is abysmal, as you might guess. And that's getting worse all the time. The union, but here's how Brandon Johnson wins. First and foremost, Vallis decided to run as what sounded like the Illinois Policy Institute, which is the conservative think tank there. He was carping a lot of their language. It's very strange to hear. Paul Vallis has run for other offices, including when I met him for the first time, he was running as lieutenant governor with the Democratic governor at the time. He lost then too. By the way, he loses a lot of elections. So,
is he? What kind of? I mean, you met him. What was he like?
He's a wonk. Everybody who's ever been on an editorial board knows this guy, or knows a guy. Every state has them. And it's a person who has just immersed themselves in the politics and the documents and the minutia of state government. And that's what this guy was, and remains. So he was made the CEO of this Chicago Public Schools, did a good job, went on to, I think, Philadelphia, if I'm not mistaken, did a decent job there. But he's a Chicagoan, came back, ran, like I said, for lieutenant governor, lost, has run for governor, lost, has run for, I forget what else he's run for, and lost. But Brandon Johnson, the mayor-elect of Chicago now, good guy, good family guy, charming guy, young guy. Everybody saw, I think he's 48 or 49. Every time he's run, he has been written off, and he wins every time.
Like Bernie.
Well, except Bernie didn't, because, well, we all know what the Democrats.
I mean, in the early part of Bernie's career, I mean, when he was running for mayor of Burlington, when he ran for Congress from Vermont, when he ran for Senate, he was never expected to win, and he always did.
Yeah, so there's obviously something there, and that's what I want to get down to, Ted, is that, and Brandon Johnson did not win by a little. He won by, I think, 2 or 3 percentage points. It was it's shocking. It is absolutely shocking in a city.
So what do you think's going on? What do you think's going on there? I mean,
well,
I know that he didn't ignore the crime issue, right? He did address it.
Yeah, he backpedaled from defund a lot, but still kind of leans that way. I think that the Black community of Chicago, as a Black, I'm not Black, obviously, so I'm trying not to speak for the community, but their voting patterns certainly show that, when you are a law and order candidate, they know what that means. That means stop and frisking Black people is what it means. And
Right.
they don't like that. So how did he win? I think first and foremost, he was the CTU, the Chicago Teachers Union, is massive and has a incredible get out the vote office. Its political operatives are very, very, very good and can clearly win citywide elections. And that's what happened here. I think it was a Black candidate against a white candidate. Neither of them really were able to get the Latino vote solidified for either Johnson or Vallis. And so, that was split or just disinterested. You look at the precinct, the breakdown. I've been looking over that for the last 2 days, and people voted the way you think they voted. The white districts voted for Vallis. The Black districts voted for Johnson. There are a
this
few
is along racial lines, pretty much. I mean,
racial and also, crime was important to what we say North Shorers. That's where the Gold Coast is. That's where the wealthier white liberals live, and that's where the crime has started to really tick up significantly. And so that was a concern for them. Down on the south side of Chicago, crime's always been there. And so,
yeah, sure. But I mean, there's definitely, I mean, what he's promoted, we'll see if it ever happens, is sort of the meat of defund the police without the slogan, right? Which is
right.
Where, more social workers, fewer beat cops,
more money for mental health,
more programs,
really smart. I mean,
that seems to make sense, right? I mean, otherwise we're just going to have more police shootings of mentally ill people. I mean, and honestly, I do have sympathy for the police. I don't think that it's not their job, and I don't think anybody joins the police thinking, what I really want to do? I want to deal with like crazy people. Crazy people who are like biting and stabbing and talking to someone that's not there. That excites me. I want to deal with that. Someone who's like smells like their own piss and shit. That's going to be awesome for me. Like, that's not what, cops become cops because they want to stop bad guys. And
we're kind of in it. I mean, you have talked about it. I've talked about it because we both work and live, at least I did, and still visit Chicago, in a large city. You live in New York City. There's no presence on the mass transit. It's a very dangerous to ride it. It's gotten worse. The vibe itself is unsettling as hell. So I think for me, because I'm a mealy-mouthed moderate on some things, you can have both. You can increase the number of police patrols. You have to. It does work. Couple that with reforms and how you police. That's the direction.
I mean, pedestrian partnered street beat cops. Man, I miss those.
Yeah,
those are great. Get them out of their cruisers.
Yeah, exactly.
In New York, get them off their fucking phones. They're on their phones. They're like teenagers.
Isn't
They're
that
like
amazing? It's
get
amazing.
Off your fucking phone. What are you doing?
I was driving home. I mean, down here in Alabama, I was driving home along the main road that leads near my home. There's a cop on the side of the road, and ostensibly, you figure he's there to be radaring or speed gunning, or the cars that are. And there's this guy driving around me going, the speed limit on this road is 45. He must have been going 90 if he was going a mile. And I look up at the cop going, oh, he's really going to nail him. And I drive by the cop and he's on his fucking phone. I'm going, why am I paying you? I mean, I can, I don't have to pay someone to be on their phone.
No, I don't understand why that's even permitted. I really don't. I mean, it's getting to the point where, there are some conservative schools, and hey, count me in with the conservatives when it comes to this, where kids have to either promise not to use their phones during the class, or they have to put them in a pocket, like at the door before they come in. We're going to have to do that with the police. It'll be like Hill Street Blues, like, all right, everybody, put your phones in the bag.
Yeah. And you can get them when you come back.
It shouldn't. I mean, honestly, these are adults. They should just get an order, like, like no personal phone calls, no personal texting. the end. You're on the job.
So is this, I mean, are we seeing progressives on the move now? I mean, are we going to see more and more? I mean, the woman who won and whose name is very Polish and very hard to pronounce, who won up in Wisconsin, beat the
For the
conservative.
state Supreme Court. Yeah.
Big deal. Why is that a big deal? Very quickly, bullet point it, because the Republicans who took control of the House in a fluke year were able to gerrymander the hell out of Wisconsin. So even though Democrats make somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 30% more of the votes, the legislature is overwhelmingly Republican. There does seem to be
And
something.
apparently she prevailed even in a gerrymandered vote, right? Is what I understand.
Well, it's a statewide vote, so there's not really gerrymandering involved there. That's just strictly and she ran against a guy who had been 10 years ago a respected jurist, a senior jurist. He retired from the court. They resurrected him, and he's become some kind of Trump, MAGA dipshit. And so she won.
But she supposedly, so basically, though, her vote is deemed to be tips the Wisconsin Supreme Court solidly into the pro-choice column.
Yes, yeah, and also not just that, but also very progressive. It's going to be a progressive court. So what does that mean? That means that they're going to challenges to the gerrymandering are going to stand, and they're going to have to change the map. And they have a Democratic governor now. And so you're going to see some significant changes. Is this something we're going to see sweep across the nation? Obviously not down here in the deep South, but you're
two
looking
elections. Well, I don't know. Huey Long was a Southerner, but that was a long time ago, and that didn't work out so well for him. There's look, two elections do not a wave make. So I would say, hey, it's good news for those of us who are from that side of the aisle, but I don't think we can really make anything out of it. I mean, right now, I think the real general trend, though, and it's been the tide's been running out from the center for a long time. I see this as part of a continuation where the center is no longer holding. It's going to be the populist right as is already dominant, and the populist left is going to make some more inroads, continue to make inroads against corporate Democrats, even though corporate Democrats have a lot of institutional advantages. What do you think, Scott?
I think that the elections, but the trends, I'm looking at what happened, for instance, in Arizona, where Trumpies got trounced, and around the country, many of them lost. Some won, but many of them lost. I'm going to say, obviously the trend is to more progressive policies for the Democratic Party and for Democratic candidates. I think this running as a centrist makes zero sense in this environment. And I'm also looking at polls where the Republican Party and the MAGAization of that party is eroding it to a nub, that in the next 5 years, it really could be a fairly inconsequential party. And by that, I mean, not disappear, but the Republican Party of America in the 1960s and early 70s was not, 30% of the vote.
Well, the thing is also, I think another thing worth reminding our listeners is of the trifecta of pro-abortion rights plebiscites in some pretty conservative states, right? Wasn't like Idaho was not one of them, but Kansas, notably, where voters came back and supported abortion rights. So I think the wild card here is the overturning of Roe v. Wade. I think Republicans bit off more than they should have chewed this quickly. They should have let the Dodd's decision sort of settle instead of moving so aggressively to ban abortion across the board. I mean, I think they feel the wind at their sails, but there's having the wind at your sails, and then there's sort of like trying to overreach. This is a country where 85% of voters tell Gallup they support abortion rights in some form. Calling for a wholesale ban with no effective exceptions for the life of the mother or incest.
Right. Well, Oklahoma had to revisit there. And the other part of this, Ted, then we're going to wrap it up, is that this segment up is that these the pieces of legislation were written by, oh, what's the word I'm looking at? Oh yeah,
Dipshits.
morons. Well, morons,
That one.
dipshits. Your call. Because, like you said, they didn't have the medical exceptions. It was clearly not written by a medical professional. It was insane. So, going forward, you're going to see. I mean, when you see a state like I said, like Oklahoma, having to revisit that legislation less than 6 months after passing it, you're talking about
It's embarrassing.
it's embarrassing. It's a significant issue to run in 2024. So we're going to be back in just a moment, and we'll be talking about Vive la France.
That was very nice, Scott.
Thank you. Yeah, well, it's a full service podcast right here, music and everything. I'm Scott Stannis for the DMZ America podcast, coming to you from the right.
Et je suis dessinateur, éditorialiste, demi-français, Ted Rall de la gauche.
Vive le TED.